The wine we make the most of is Morey-Saint-Denis Villages, and the bulk of it comes from a place named called Les Poiroux, which is around the Domaine. So along the Rue de la Bussière, between the Rue de la Bussière and the RN74. And we have some other in Le Village. We have some it's quite a blend in Les Herbouettes and in the Clos, but they are all lower slope on the west side of the RN74, between the Premier Cru and the main road. And those are slightly deeper soils as a whole. They're quite clay rich, and Morey-Saint-Denis Village has a tendency it could easily get tannic. And so this is a cuvée we do very few punch downs with, and it ages well. So Morey-Saint-Denis tends to have a little bit of spice, more pantry spice. So you find some of that in the Morey Village. There's a kind of warmth that comes from that spicy side, and it tends to lean more towards strawberry and cherries in the fruit profile. Moving to Chambolle Village, we have two blocks that really constitute this, and historically it's mostly from Les Drazés and then some Frémières. The Frémière is more recent, and we're just replanting it, so it's not been in the blend for a few years. But Les Drazés is on the north side of Chambolle, and Chambolle has this stereotype of being very delicate and floral, and the north side that's closer to Morey, not so much. It's beneath Bonnemare, beneath Les Sentiers or the Beaux, which are all tannic wines, and this falls into that line. And again, it's potentially very tannic. So we again try not to do much on the extraction front, really let it infuse. It gets 1 or 2 punch downs, the rest being a few pump overs. It's a fairly structured, powerful Chambolle for what I think people expect if you read the textbooks about what Chambolle is supposed to be like. Further south, you get different expressions. Moving on to the Premier Crus, Morey-Saint-Denis Premier Cru. This is a blended Premier Cru, and our Morey Premier Cru is a blend of Ruchot on the south side beneath Clos, Milande, Charrière, and Clos on the north side of the village. It's very Morey. It has the spice that I talked about for the village. It has tannins that are a little bit more polished than the village, and that fruit. It is not a super Premier Cru. I think it's very much in level between Village and Grand Cru. Then Gevrey-Chambertin and Combottes, one of the historical plots for the domaine. The name Combottes is a small combe, and a combe is those canyons that go into the hillside and the plateau that were eroded out. So they tend to be forested, and in the case of the Combottes, it's just beneath the Combe Grisard and on the side of the alluvial fans. So it's a little bit deeper soils, and when you have a combe like that, the cold air masses behave like liquids and pour out of these combes. And so the Combottes tends to have a bit more of a diurnal shift than the surrounding vineyards. And as a result, maybe just a little bit of rusticity compared to its neighbor to the south, Clos de la Roche, which is one of the other wines we make. So it doesn't have quite that polish. It gets a little bit into the smoked meat aromas when it gets older. It can have that kind of protein, iron kind of feel to it, which shares with Clos de la Roche actually. And I think it's a wine that has a ton of character. Now, I consider that a super Premier Cru for sure. We have also a Premier Cru called Chambolle Premier Cru les Gruenchers. Chambolle les Gruenchers is at the entrance of Chambolle-Musigny, so it's just north of Chambolle, just south of Morey. And that's a vineyard that I like a lot because it's old vines planted in the 30s, and it's where we derive our sélection massal from, our field blend. So we derive cuttings to replant other vineyards from there because it's a very high performing selection. That's a vineyard that I need to pick early. Otherwise, I lose the specialness because it's really all about the floral. It's very Chambolle. It's all about all the floral side, the tannins being delicate. And if I pick it a bit late, it just becomes clunky. And so I need to be on the earlier side. But it's been a small production for us historically. We make between 3 and 5 barrels most years, and we're hopefully just about to increase a little bit. Then Vosne-Romanée Premier Cru, les Beaux. It's our only Premier Cru which is above the Grand Cru line. And those have a different character. The soils tend to be shallower, and so yes, the rock is never very far, and they ripen well because they take the sun, those upper hill Premier Crus. They might be in the shadow a little bit earlier. So it goes easily into the dark fruits side, while at the same time holding on to a certain mineral austerity. And I've not completely wrapped. It's for me in the Premier Cru and actually in the whole domain, it feels still like a little bit of an outlier because the style can feel very ripe and at the same time stern, which is not. And when I say very ripe, I don't mean alcohol or sweetness or that sort of thing, but it gets darker in the fruit profile than a lot of the other wines. And at the same time, it has this spine going through it, which can be that makes you feel like you're growing on a place that's close to rocks or on rocks. And then we have some Vosne-Romanée Premier Cru au Malconsorts, which is the vineyard directly to the south of La Tâche in the same altitude curve. We've been farming that one since 2005. It was very exciting to get those vineyards and to make wine from them. And that's another super Premier Cru as far as I'm concerned, because it really has that fullness that Grand Crus are supposed to have. It's a fullness of expression, I should say. So there's you don't find yourself thinking, oh, if I could only blend this into it, it would make the wine better. It's just it's very much a complete wine, and that aromatically tends to get quite rich, so it can smell a little bit of cocoa, mocha, that kind of note. It has the Vosne textbook spice, which is much more exotic than the Morey spice. It also has firm tannins. We're already in the south side of Vosne, where the wines get more tannic going towards Nuit Saint-Georges. And that's a wine that holds on to its structure for a long time. We've now been making it for 20 years, and the first vintage are still there. It's fleshy, but you can feel the structure underneath, and that structure seems to be in there for the long haul. So it's powerful side of Vosne. It's not the when you're in the Romanées, then you're just into the silk. This is not the silk side of Vosne. It's a more more brawny kind of expression. The Grand Crus. Charmes-Chambertin. Charmes-Chambertin tends to be one of our more powerful Grand Crus as well. We destem that one a little bit more because I feel the whole cluster character doesn't always mesh well with the wine. It's so when I say a little bit more, it tends to still be 75% whole cluster. It's just maybe an extra 10% of destemming. So when I think of Charmes, black cherries tend to be the predominant fruit. We do pick it on the late side, and it's not as silky in the tannins as some of the other Grand Crus we make, but it's very much. It's got big shoulders. You can tell it's a charger wine, which is funny because pre-biodynamics it tended to be a little bit too heavy on structure and too light on flesh, and now they're much more in balance. But it's really grown and taken on some heft since the early 2000s. We also make some Echezeaux. Echezeaux, we are in the lower part of Les Champs Traversins, which Echezeaux has a lot of place names, which I think it's counterintuitive relative to most of the Côte de Nuits, but the best parts of Echezeaux tend to be the flatter parts, and we are in one of those flatter parts, albeit on the edge. And I think that those flatter parts make wines that are more elegant than the steeper parts of Echezeaux, which tend to be more tannic. For me, Echezeaux is one of the two or three more elegant crus in the domaine. Very spicy, very textbook Vosne, and that was one of the first vineyards we converted to biodynamic as well. And the tannins, with a shift to biodynamic, we had probably a little bit of compaction in the soils, and we've find much more finesse in the tannins since we've changed systems of farming. I really like its spicy expression, and the textures of Echezeaux are very seductive. Bonne-Mare. Bonne-Mare is a Grand Cru that's split between Morey-Saint-Denis and Chambolle-Musigny. Most of it is in Chambolle, and our Bonne-Mare is in Chambolle. It's also reputed for having two types of soil: the white soils that are closer to the top, more marly white soils, and red soils on the lower part of the Bonne-Mare. And we have two blocks, and I'd say between the two blocks we're probably just over half red soils and a little under half for the white soils. The white soils tend to bring a lot of perfume, very floral, very light wines, potentially lacking a little bit in body and a little bit thin. And the red soils are very much of the earth, and they are powerful, sometimes lacking a little bit of delicacy or something a little bit more subtle and captivating. And when you blend the two, we've only vinified them separately once, but I've tasted them in a colleague's cellar separated a few times. Sometimes when you blend things, you lose what's special about both, or sometimes you retain what's good about both components, and very much in Bonne-Maur we get the best of both. And so that's it works well and especially in a co-ferment like we do. I think it works very well. So it's a wine that's always structured. I think of it as kind of an athletic build. It's a little wiry. It's never very fleshy, and at the same time, it's that sinew is charismatic. You just like it's a very slow ager. It's maybe the wine in the cellar that needs the most time to come around, and there's an inherent seriousness to it. But I think it's a really great Grand Cru. And then we have two Grand Crus in Morey, and that are crucial to the domaine. We've built our identity partly around these. Clos de la Roche, between Combottes and Clos-Saint-Denis. Clos de la Roche, as I mentioned, shares some elements with Combottes. It tends, for me, I find a graphite iron kind of quality to the wines, both aromatically and in the mouthfeel. It has musk, kind of musk side to it, a little bit feral, a little bit animal, not animal dirty, but in that kind of spiciness that wild animals have to them, and nutmeg and cinnamon, and at the same time some of that cherry strawberry side that Morey tends to have. And I think it's maybe the most Morey wine, or the highest expression of Morey is in Clos de la Roche. And Clos-Saint-Denis gave its name to the village of Morey-Saint-Denis, but I think it's a wine that is separate from a lot of the other Grand Crus and wines of Morey, because it is much silkier in the tannins. It's the most refined of all the wines that Morey makes, and it's a little bit more floral, more lifted. I think if you're not a true Burgundy drinker, it's a little bit harder to get into, because it doesn't have much structure, or it can feel very light in the body. But that perfume is what I think Pinot is all about, and so Clos-Saint-Denis holds a special place for me. There's two Grand Crus that are very seldom seen because we don't own the vineyards, and the owner of the vineyard gets their share in bottles, and actually they sell some of the bottles, but we don't. We save them for charity events, very occasional specific things. But one of them is Chambertin. Our Chambertin is really a mostly Chambertin Clos de Bez with a little portion of Chambertin that goes into it. Chambertin is a very famous vineyard for a reason. I mean, it is both powerful without being coarse, without the quality is very obvious very early on in the life of that wine. And I think it's a really top site. It's exciting wine to be making. Gevrey, a lot of the vineyards, especially as you get closer to the village of Gevrey, there's less spiciness than in Morey or in Vosne. It's more about a kind of minerality that brings a tension and holds the wine together. It's also, there was a view that Chambertin was tannic, and I think that was a crossing of reference or of ideas that came at a certain era where there was a fashion for extracting a lot in the village, or wines of that village, because I don't think it's necessarily that tannic. I think the tannins are very elegant, very fine, and but it's more of an aromatic seriousness in a way. Romanée-Saint-Vivant. We are located in the lower part of the Romanée-Saint-Vivant, in the secteur des Quatre Journaux. It's a vineyard that we started farming, again, with a sharecropping agreement with the owner since 2005. what's impressed me, it's a funny place because the earth is very sticky. You get the feeling that in Romanée-Saint-Vivant, it feels very clayey, and places that have a lot of clay tend to be quite tannic wines, and that's not the case. And actually, there's very good drainage there. It stays the soil stays sticky, but it's not like the water doesn't penetrate. And actually, it makes some of the most elegant tannins of anything that we do. It's never hard. It's a wine that feels almost a bit like a sphere. You know, it feels very, very smooth and slick, and has a ton of length to it, and it has that Vosne spice. It has some floral elements. It's a very deep wine, and you understand why people get excited about that vineyard.